back to Franciscan University Presents. Today we're talking about the Crusades. This is something that people do get hit at as Catholics oftentimes. It's seen in popular films like The Kingdom of Heaven with a lot of historical inaccuracies. Even a former president, Bill Clinton, talked about some things that were historically inaccurate. Yes. I was going to say problematic, but I think they're really inaccurate. Yeah. So the quote that we hear, we've already dealt with kind of the myth, were the Crusades an aggression of the Catholic Church, and we've already seen that really is debunked, because the reality is it was a defensive maneuver, and it was the Muslims who first attacked. Yes. So when the Crusades captured Jerusalem in 1099, did the blood really run ankle deep in the streets, which is an exact quote? Was it an accurate tale of the massacres perpetrated by Christians? Because, again, a former president even used that exact quote. Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
The short answer is no. There's a longer answer. The short answer is do the physics. It would take far too many people to make it run as deep as, as President Clinton said it did. He was drawing on a Crusade Chronicle to make that statement, Fulcher of Chartres, but he was using it very clumsily. You can't take ancient and medieval documents at face value. You have to know the context that they're writing in. You have to know the purpose of what they're saying. And Fulcher was writing something that was very significantly a advertising tract, a PR tract, and a little bit of a boastful statement. Also, drawing on Old Testament imagery. He's very consciously drawing on Old Testament imagery of victories that the Israelites had won over their foes, and saying we're doing the same kind of thing. Yeah. But no, the blood did not run to the horse's bridles or knees or whatever.
Yeah, this is all drawn from the Book of Revelation as well,
from Revelation
from the Old Testament.
Yes.
But the whole point is to show that the struggle, the conflict is between evil and good.
Evil and good. Yes, it's not meant to be taken factually or mathematically.
That's right.
And it's very problematic, as you said.
Even if you concede the point that Clinton is making, and it's polemically self-serving,
yes,
something survives, namely the fact that abuses, atrocities have always been committed. But the principle of abusus non tollit usus, I think, should govern the situation. That vindicates it. The abuse doesn't abolish the use.
Correct.
I mean, we committed countless atrocities during World War II to rid the world of that scourge called Nazism. But nobody invalidates that crusade in Europe, which is how Eisenhower described it.
Which is a very good parallel. But there's something else that needs to be mentioned in terms of that massacre. And that is the laws of war that applied universally to everyone in the ancient and medieval world, and really up into the modern world. When a city is besieged, if it surrenders, then it can make terms, and the lives, and to a certain degree perhaps the property of the people in the city, are spared. If a city decides to resist and take its chances, then if it falls to storm, everything, the people, the belongings in the city, belong to the conqueror. Now that may be very unpleasant, and I certainly would not want to be present at such an event on either the conquering or the defeated side, but that is the law.
This was the common law.
This is the law.
The Muslims observed it fastidiously.
Very fastidiously
ruthlessly.
and ruthlessly.
When you look at how the Muslims conquered Christian lands for centuries, building up until 1099 when Jerusalem falls, you see a horrendous record completely whitewashed and forgotten. And I think more to the point
context
is this,
of that is missing.
I think we project ourselves in our own self-contempt in acting as though this was all, proto-colonialization, that this was our attempt, as the first world to kind of colonize the third world. But as you've pointed out, and as Professor Tom Madden has pointed out, Islam was the first world. The Muslim civilization was the superpower really up until about the 16th century. Europe, through the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries, was more like a third world. And they were the ones who were being colonized by force, with Asia Minor falling as it did, in the 11th century and so on.
Yes, and we don't have nearly time enough to list all the Muslim massacres of Christian cities, but just to list two or three. Christmas Eve 1144 in Edessa, the Muslims broke into the first Crusader state and massacred they targeted specifically all the Frankish Christians. It was really an act of ethnic cleansing or genocide. Killed them all. 2 years later, when the Armenian Christians there asked for the Crusaders to come back and save them from the Muslims and rule them, the Muslims came back again and killed all the Armenian Christians. In I think it was 68, the Muslims took Antioch from the capital of that northern Crusader state and massacred so many of the Christians there that most of the noble families of Antioch simply disappear from the historical record. They're all dead. 1453, the fall of Constantinople, enormous massacres, rapes of nuns. I mean, this is all part of the laws of war. If you're going to criticize what happened in 1099 in Jerusalem, you need to look at the larger record.
But you also have to look at Dresden in 1944. The firebombing of a city that did more devastation to a civilian population than Nagasaki and Hiroshima put together. For days and for nights, with the calm detachment of a B-24 bomber or whatever. And I am not pro-Nazi in any sense, but when you look at the abuses and when you recognize the fact that this is more than morally questionable. This is reprehensible.
Morally reprehensible.
And the details that you marshal, I think, with great scholarly rigor and scruple, you have to see those against the backdrop of a world that is simply vanishing, a Christian world. It disappears. I mean, two-thirds of Christendom is gone, vaporized in the space of what, a century or two.
In the space of a century.
Most of the Mediterranean world is vacated, and the Muslims simply take over. They swallow it whole.